To gavel into order, this hearing for the Committee on Environment, Resiliency, and Parks, Docket 0451. For the record, to begin, my name is Matt O'Malley. I'm the District 6 City Councilor. I'm also the chair of the Council's Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. I'm joined by my dear colleague, City Councilor Liz Braden of District 9. This hearing is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. Will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 8, RCN 82, and Verizon Channel 1964. The Zoom link to provide public testimony for this hearing can be found by emailing shane.pack@boston.gov. That's shane.pac@boston.gov. Please make sure that your Zoom handle is your full name, and when you are called, please state your name and affiliation or your residence, and limit your comments to 2 minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. If you are unable to provide testimony today, you may submit written testimony or a 2-minute video for our record by emailing the committee at ccc.ep@boston.gov. Once again, that's cce.ep, at boston.gov. We are joined today with Joseph LaRusso, who is the Energy Efficiency and Distributed Resources Finance Manager of the Environment Department. Today, we're going to be discussing docket number 0451, which is a message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a $400,000 grant for the Market Development Program awarded by the Mass Center of Excellence Corporation. This grant will, of course, be administered by the Environment Department. The grant will fund the city's procurement of a solar storage system at Moon Island. This will provide a critical training asset to the city, as well as the region's emergency response and inspectional service personnel. Moon Island serves as a training location for the Boston Fire Department, as well as the corresponding agencies for 14 other cities and towns in Greater Boston. Massachusetts Clean Energy Center has partnered with the City of Boston to install these solar arrays and energy storage system. I'm looking forward to seeing how quickly and efficiently we can get this project online. Mr. LaRusso, before we get to you, I wanted to see if Councillor Braden had any opening comments or before we get into your presentation. So, Councillor Braden, the floor is yours.
Just to say I'm delighted to be here. This is a particular interest of mine since I have a solar array myself. I don't have a battery system yet, but that's on my bucket list. So I'm really curious to hear more about this project and excited that we're moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. Here, here. We've also been joined by at-large City Councillor Anissa Asaibi-George. Councillor Asaibi-George, did you have any opening comments before we get to Joe LaRusso?
I don't. I'm excited to hear this presentation and be a part of this hearing today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course. Thank you. Mr. LaRusso, welcome. Thank you for wearing a suit. I feel underdressed that I'm wearing a polo, but it's both rainy and humid today. So and we're trying to be energy efficient in the O'Malley Naforos household, so we don't have the air conditioner turned on. But you look terrific. Great to see you. We typically would have these different grant hearing orders, I don't know, every other month or so. So it's been a while. Appreciate the great work of you and your team. And please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Braden, I'm, like you, I have a solar array and I do not yet have a battery, and it is also on my list as well, which actually is a good segue into this project. This was a project that was actually brought forward by the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And they brought it forward because the center is interested in advancing the deployment of battery storage, both commercial battery storage, which is those battery storage arrays that you see in containers that are really intended to support buildings, as well as the kind of battery that both you and I would like to get someday, which is the smaller domestic battery that would serve the load in our homes during brief power outages. They brought it forward because they recognized that among the Commonwealth's firefighters, there was an unease with this technology. They know that it, like any technology that contains storage, it represents a life safety threat to them when they respond to fires. And in order to begin to address the concerns that firefighters have regarding life safety, And in order to familiarize firefighters with the technology in all of its form factors, both the commercial scale storage configurations and domestic configurations, they approached the city and asked the city if, they told us they wanted to support the development of these technologies at the Moon Island Training Academy. They saw it as a perfect fit. And we have worked with the Clean Energy Center to develop this project. And the goal is to not only deploy storage at the Moon Island Training Academy, but to also install solar on the roof. And we're also planning on installing solar thermal panels on the roof. The storage that would be installed as part of this project would include a commercial scale configuration, albeit a small one. It would be 125 kilowatts. And the domestic, it would include a domestic battery. But the goal is to familiarize the firefighters who are studying at the Moon Island Training Academy to become familiar with the difference between solar thermal panels, solar photovoltaic panels, and these commercial scale and residential scale systems, so they know how to deactivate them so that they will be safe when they arrive on the scene when they've got to address fires. The other reason why the Clean Energy Center thought that Moon Island was a perfect fit for this project was because it turns out that the National Fire Protection Agency is located in Quincy. And of course, Moon Island is not in Boston, it's actually in Quincy. It's an island that Boston owns, but the island itself is in Quincy. And the NFPA has developed a curriculum around storage and photovoltaics and in these technologies. And the goal is to marry that NFPA, those NFPA curricula to these real life and working examples of the technology. The grant is for $400,000. There's a 50% cost share, so the city would be contributing up to $200,000. And so the entire project cost would be on the order of $600,000.
Terrific. And what would be the ideal timeline for funding and building?
I think, we would, our goal would be to get an RFP out by the end of the year. I would say probably in the early November timeframe, and to begin construction of design, I would think over the winter, and construction beginning in the late winter, early spring.
Okay. And I would assume the answer would be no. Is there any concern that because Moon Island is technically in the city limits of Quincy and there's a strong disagreement with some other city assets, specifically Long Island in terms of Quincy, would that at all play any factor into hindering construction or having this project come to fruition?
My opinion is that it would not, Councillor. This is not a large-scale construction project. The solar would be a rooftop array. I don't know if you've ever been to the Fire Academy. It's not a small building, but it's not a very large one. Yeah. The delivery of the storage container on the for the commercial scale solar would probably be one truckload delivery. So there wouldn't be a vast caravan of trucks rolling through Squantum in order to reach Moon Island. Yeah. And cause consternation among the people who live in Squantum. Yeah. So I think that if there was a project that could go forward at Moon Island, it would be this one.
Good. And what other city resources have, I know, I understand it, perhaps your team working with BPD have recently finished a solar array over a parking area. What other city resources have PV panels and solar?
Currently, the city's deployment of PV is being done through its Renew Boston Trust program. Yeah. That program is an energy services contract that we have with Honeywell International, and that contract was awarded pursuant to the Green Power, the Green Communities Act, I should say. That's Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 25A, Section 11I. So that program is structured really as a master agreement. So we have the master agreement. We've just completed, in fact, the canopy array that you mentioned that's at police headquarters is the very last energy conservation measure that's been installed under phase 1 of Renew Boston Trust. We're currently preparing to get away with phase two. I should say that phase one had a cost of approximately $11 million. So it was $11 million of combined energy efficiency and renewables. There was an array installed at the community center in Rosendale. For example, another one of the first projects that were in the first phase of the New Boston Trust. We're about to get started on the second phase. The second phase will be approximately $19 million. And then a third phase is planned as well. And so whenever we complete each phase, there's an assessment of which buildings are suitable for solar in terms of the age of the roof, because we certainly don't want to install solar on a roof that's very old, because we don't want to have to remove an array to replace a roof and put the array back up. So taking into account those considerations and the work that we're doing as part of the general phase, we're rolling out solar on that basis. But I think I would say that the Renew Boston Trust program has accelerated the amount of solar that we're installing, the rate at which we're installing it.
And one thing I know you and I have spoken about, and give the mayor credit for his leadership, and quite frankly, this body in mandating that all new municipal buildings will be net zero carbon. Obviously, we are going to have to get to a point to retrofit many of these buildings. I know that's in the Renew Boston report, Green Boston report. So in this again, it is not really pertinent to this particular grant. We support this grant. Everyone's going to vote for this grant. This is a great grant, but well, we have you here because I think this is such important work. Has there been sort of a prioritization of other city buildings in terms of the solar capability? I'm thinking of the West Roxbury Library, for example, which has a huge, no real trees. It seems it's sun facing. It's relatively new. It was renovated, I think. Well, I'm not sure when the last roof work was done, but do we have a prioritization of other city assets in terms of what could be solar ready?
I wouldn't say that we have a prioritization, in the sense that we've ranked buildings from 1 to X in terms of priority. But every time that we are planning each phase of Renew Boston Trust, we're looking at a set of buildings. And when we assemble and there's agreement on which buildings we're going to move ahead with in a phase, each one of those buildings is evaluated for its solar potential. I will tell you that, in the past, the city has, the Environment Department has commissioned a study of the solar potential of all city buildings. And that was notwithstanding which ones were suitable currently for solar. It was just, if we could put solar on all of the city's roofs, how much could we install? And it turned out to be between 5 and 6 megawatts worth.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a significant amount.
Yeah.
But again, I think, for reasons that you understand, that deployment will have to happen over time, because we're going to be moving ahead with those facilities that have newer roofs. There are some buildings that need roof replacements. And as I said, Renew Boston Trust is now providing the city with a vehicle to do both energy efficiency and renewable energy, primarily solar, on an ongoing basis and in a systematic way.
Excellent. And finally, what has there been talk about? I know that there's some shadowing from some of the buildings around, but is there an opportunity to install some PV panels at City Hall?
In fact, I think City Hall is going to be included in the next phase, in the second phase.
Great. That's fantastic.
And you raised the point about shadowing. The study that was done indicates that I think we're going to be able to put, I think the array that's planned for City Hall is 40 kilowatts, not an enormous array. My domestic array, I don't know about Councilor Breeden, but mine is a small one. It's about 8 kilowatts. So, think the average domestic installation is 5 kilowatts. So it'll be equivalent to having about 5 homes worth of solar on top of City Hall. But it will fit into one corner of the roof, the one corner that's not shaded by 60 State Street or 28 State Street, those large buildings that surround City Hall.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how not only is the technology advancing and you're seeing smaller, you're seeing the ability to create more power with sort of less infrastructure, but the cost, I don't have the exact figure. I should have Googled this before I got on, but I want to say that the cost of PV infrastructure has decreased dramatically over the last 10 years. And I see Liz nodding her head, so maybe that's a good thing that I'll stop for this round and I'll throw to Liz Braden for some questions and her expertise as well. But thank you, Joe, for your great work, and look forward to voting this affirmatively and putting it before the council soon.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Councilor Braden?
Thank you. Oh, this is exciting. I'm excited to hear about City Hall. I have a 5 kilowatt system on our roof, and it's more than we need. We have 2 apartments, so we produce all our electricity, and we donate our surplus to the food pantry to run the refrigerators up the street.
That's great.
We got a bigger system because we were going to get a plug-in electric car. I have a hybrid, and it doesn't draw as much energy as I had expected. So, you mentioned that this out at Moon Island, they're going to have a thermal, solar thermal as well as solar PV. That'll provide nice hot water for everyone. Is that how it works? We have that as well. So.
That's exactly right, Councillor. The solar thermal will produce domestic hot water.
And is that part of this grant as well, or is that separate?
No, that is a separate Department of Energy Resources grant that we received. But we thought that it would be a good opportunity to combine the technologies on a single roof, again, so that the firefighters could learn to tell the difference between a solar thermal array, which contains, sort of refrigerant material, and poses less of a life safety threat than a solar panel, which, when they arrive on the scene, needs to be deactivated in case, for example, they have to go through the roof to create some ventilation to manage the fire. Yeah,
absolutely. And then phase 2, and this is more of just anticipating what's coming next. Phase 2, the City Hall is going to get a new system. Are there other locations in the city that you have lined up? I'm sure you have several.
We do, and I did not bring that list with me, but I can provide it to you if you like after the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, that's really all I had. In terms of design costs, how much does it cost to design a system like this? Or
at Moon Island?
Yeah.
I think, the project budget is $600,000. I'll be candid. This is, I believe, the first system of this type that I've installed. Mm-hmm. But I would think that the design cost would probably be on the order of 15 to 20% of the cost. That's a fraction.
And then the storage, the battery system, how much storage are you going to have? Is it like it'll function like an emergency backup for a short period of time, or is it just really for educational purposes?
No, the storage will support the facility in the case of a power outage, in the event of a power outage. And it could also be used to support the load in the building. And so that it could be, it would be partially powered by the array, partially powered by the electric grid. Mm-hmm. So it would allow the facility to be supported by the storage rather than by grid supplied electricity. So I think it might represent an opportunity to reduce the amount of electricity we're purchasing from Eversource to service that building. And it would also include the 2 smaller domestic batteries. I think, they would contribute to that overall contribution from the storage, but those smaller arrays would not really be able to support a facility the size of the Moon Island Academy for very long. I think I would probably correct to characterize those as more learning-based. The purpose is primarily educational.
Yeah. I'm also curious, does the city get SRECs for their solar production, or is that just something that you folks like you and I get?
Oh, that is a long story, Councillor.
I know, we don't have to.
Well, I'll give you the short answer. Years ago, we built 2 arrays. One is on top of the Archive Center. One is at the facility at 400 Frontage Road. They were built under the SREC program. And yes, we do get SRECs for those. But now the state has deployed a new incentive program called SMART Massachusetts. Gosh, I'm not going to remember the full acronym. But that provides an incentive directly to the developers rather than the owner of the systems. And the reason, and that was a program that was rolled out by the Department of Energy Resources. One of the primary reasons the department wanted to do that was because when they had a rec program like SREC 1 and SREC 2, the owner would receive the recs and the owner would receive, they would have to sell those recs in a market.
Yeah.
And like any market, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And it was hard for developers who were taking those recs to really sort of pencil out what their rate of return was going to be if part of their revenue depended on a market price that fluctuated. So the SMART program is intended to give developers more certainty around the incentives that they receive when they construct solar. The RECs, however, there are RECs that are, continue to be associated with the power produced by solar, but the RECs under the SMART program go directly to the local distribution companies, Eversource, National Grid, so that they can meet their renewable portfolio standard compliance requirement.
Yeah, good.
I tried to compress that down.
No, that's good. And I know the price goes up and down. It fluctuates quite dramatically sometimes, but it's pretty nice at the moment. So
I know, I just got a check.
yeah, it's lovely when you get a check. Very good. Chair O'Malley, I'm all done with my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. I will tell you that I've just upgraded from the Chevy Volts to the Chevy Bolt, so I will be coming over. I'll take you and Mary out to dinner, and I'll charge my car in your driveway.
Very good. Anytime.
Thank you. It's great to see we've also been joined by at-large City Councillor Julia Mejia. Welcome, Councillor Mejia. We'll get to you in a moment, but first, Councillor Sabi George, if you have any questions for Mr. LaRusso.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. LaRusso, for being with us. I know you've gone over some of the city's assets that we're doing the solar arrays. Are we doing the same with BPS in our Boston Public Schools facilities? Because as you know, we have over 100 school buildings, 125 or 26 to be exact. And many of them, because they're old, were built on higher ground, sort of at the tops of hills. And I think they'd be a great resource or place to have arrays placed.
As I mentioned when I was speaking to Councillor O'Malley, the city at one time commissioned a study to determine how much solar in the aggregate it could install on all of its roofs, and it was 5 or 6 megawatts. And I would have to say probably more than 4 megawatts of that was associated with schools, simply because schools have such large, beautiful, flat roofs. So yes, they do represent a really valuable opportunity to deploy lots more solar. And I'm pleased to tell you that although schools were not included in the first phase or the second phase of Renew Boston Trust, largely because there were studies underway at BPS about changes in their curriculum and changes in the use of their school buildings and so on, we postponed going into schools. Schools will be included in phase 3. Of Renew Boston Trust, and that will be the first opportunity we have to do solar in schools. And I believe that we will begin doing solar in schools when we get to phase 3, which would likely be, we're in September of 2020 now. I would think it would probably be late winter, early spring of 22.
Great, that's great.
The beginning of phase 3.
That's great. And I wonder when we do often redo our school roofs through the MSBA
Yes.
funding cycles. So I don't know whether through the chair, I think that I have a standing hearing order on Build BPS, but specific to some of the needs, the environmental needs of any of those rebuilds or significant renovations. But I wonder if through our, when we do any of our roof projects, that there could be an opportunity to take a look at it at that time, especially considering that there may be some proposals for new roofs between now and early 2022. So I'll make a mental note of it for sure. I'll actually make a real note that if any of those projects come before us at the City Council, that we're also including the possibility of solar arrays on those roofs. Great, but thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. LaRusso.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Sabi George. Councillor Mejia, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Malley, and thank you, Joseph. LaRusso.
Yes. Thank you,
Being
Councillor.
here.
My pleasure.
I don't have a lot of questions, to be honest. I just show up because it's on my calendar and I'm intrigued by this conversation. So I'm here for all of it, just to listen and learn. So I don't always have to have a question about everything. But I will ask, and I'm just curious about the vendors that are used for this, the vendors that potentially would be used for this project. What pool are you going to be recruiting from? How many will be from, will there be an opportunity for minority business, or women businesses to get a piece of this $400,000 pie? I'm just curious about what that equity looks like in terms of the implementation of this situation that's happening and coming on the pipeline.
This will be a public bid, Counselor, and so it will be open to one and all. I can certainly say that, it's not being limited to any particular set of vendors. We will be certainly comply with the city's requirements regarding MBE, WB participation in this project. To the extent that any work is subcontracted, we will make sure that the general contractor, if there is a general contractor selected, is aware of the MBE, WE requirements that the city has. And we certainly are always mindful of the need to make certain that the city's resources, particularly with the development of projects like this and construction, are equitably distributed among all of the workforce throughout the city.
So I just want to kind of pursue that line of thinking just a little bit further. And, the way I see some of the bids, it's usually goes to the lowest bidder, or the most competitive, or however it is that they say. And that usually makes it really difficult for smaller businesses to compete, because they have to keep their doors open, and it oftentimes, businesses that are booming can afford to take a financial, hit, if you will. Mm-hmm. And also, I know that in terms of the climate justice and environment space, there's not a lot of Black and brown folks operating in this space. And, what opportunities would exist for us to start thinking about ways that we can be more intentional about engaging communities of color in particular, whether it be through business or just education, so that they feel more a sense of understanding about the importance of climate change. And maybe this is just a conversation about a $400,000 grant, and I'm talking about all these other things, but I think all of these things are interconnected. And it's just important to plant those seeds, just because I think that the more we have these conversations, the more we might be able to get to a place where communities of color and those who are most impacted by climate change start seeing themselves reflected in the dialogue, I guess.
So I will tell you that, our department, an individual in our department who's started a program that was focused on workforce development. And, he sort of marshaled the resources and established relationships with some of the local high schools, including the city's high schools and community colleges, in order to address this issue, to make certain that there were opportunities for those folks who wanted to be trained so that they could enter this labor market. And it's a very lucrative labor market. The Mass Clean Energy Center annually has released a lot of data regarding the clean energy sector here in Massachusetts. And among the information that they published, it was clear that the salaries that are paid to individuals who have less than a college education are among the highest for those categories of workers. In other words, individuals who had 2 years of college or a high school degree could earn what in Massachusetts would be a fairly good living. And so it represents a true opportunity for people who wish to get into the clean energy sector. And we've been, we've been trying to be proactive in making certain that there are opportunities provided to people who want to enter that market, that labor market.
Thank you. And have you read all those books that are behind you?
Well, Counselor, I have to confess that I'm sitting in my kitchen and those are cookbooks.
Oh, wow. I always ask because people put them up and they act like they read them and they know they haven't. So I just want to put you on. I just want to know.
I can honestly tell you that I have not read every one of those cookbooks from cover to cover.
Cookbooks, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilor O'Malley, I'm done.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, Joe, you never cease to amaze me. The fact that you're such a chef by virtue of the sheer number of cookbooks. I look forward to post-pandemic life, having dinner at your house.
Well, Counselor, I have to confess, since we're in a public forum, that I'm a bigger eater than I am a big chef. Yeah, actually, I think, we've all been, working from home, WFH, but I think that in my case, that acronym is going to be more like weight from home because it's been a real effort to keep the weight off.
Indeed. Well, you look great, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ed Flynn has joined us. Great to see you, Councillor Flynn. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley, and thank you to my colleagues in the panel for being here. I don't have anything, any opening statement, but I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for their tremendous work on these issues, and want to say thank you to the panel as well.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Great to see you. I'll do another round of questions if anyone has one. I guess I just start is obviously Moon Island is the base of training for BFD, but many other municipalities use it as well. I think 14 was the number. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor.
And does it generate any revenue for the city? Is this sort of just an agreement? Is there any rent or use that the city makes?
I believe that it does. That would be a question that would have to be posed to the fire department, though.
Yeah.
I can't say for certainty that I know, whether or not it's a revenue generator, and if so, how much that revenue might be. The other facility that's at Moon Island is the police department's shooting range. And I know it's the same situation there. I know that, our department is not the only department that practices, using it. I know that other communities are invited to use the shooting range as well. Gotcha. So same question for the police department, I would suppose.
Yeah, more interesting. Okay. That's all I have. Councillor Braden, any further questions?
No, I don't have any further questions. I just think this is a really exciting project.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Sabi George?
No, nothing else from me. I do just appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mejia?
No further questions. Thank you for hosting, and Joe, I'll be coming over too with a plate for some food.
Okay. We'll have some for you.
Indeed. And then Councillor Flynn?
No questions, and I got on the call late, and I'm going to have the opportunity to listen to it later on and learn more about the grant and the project. So, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Joe, always great to see you, my friend. I so enjoy doing these hearings because you and your team, Chief Cook, have really been so dedicated to making sure that we obviously recognize the existential threat that climate change poses, particularly to coastal cities like Boston, and we have to be bold and we have to be aggressive. And it's not just one thing, it's just not one plan, it's a whole host of strategies, and just having more solar, particularly for our first responders, particularly for some of our city assets, which both will provide energy and serve as a learning tool for firefighters, not only from Boston, but from greater Boston as well, is really exciting. I will be asking my colleagues for approval of this docket at our next the next hearing or the next council meeting, or perhaps the one after that, and look forward to maybe when it's done, we can all do a tour and invite the council out to take a look at it, because I'd actually be really interested to see it put into practice. So I think there'd be a lot of interest for the committee to do that. So Joseph LaRusso, thank you. I would assume we don't have any public testimony, but I will check with Shane. Any individuals signed up to speak? I don't see.
No one signed up for testimony.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you for that, and thanks to central staff for exceptional work as always. This hearing on, let me just remind myself what the docket is. Docket 0451, the hearing of the Council's Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks, by virtue of my meat tenderizer, is hereby adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Counselor. Thank you, councilors.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Bye
Joe.
now. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.